Yeah, I'm opening a biscuit, that's all. Sorry.
Dear me, terrible timing.
I'll move the biscuits away from me.
What biscuits have you got out of interest?
Fox's Crunch Creams.
Oh, quality choice. That is in like the god tier of biscuits, no doubt about it.
I'm thinking they're the ones with the panda going Fox's Biscuits, that advert. And if they are the ones I'm thinking of, they are unbelievable.
I do not
want me to take a photo of them and send it?
Yeah, we could just make it part of the podcast if you want. We just talk about biscuits for 20 minutes.
Right, I will start recording. Dan, feel free to delete the biscuit chat when you feel like it.
Leave it in.
Hello and welcome to the Jackcast, the Swansea City podcast. I am Guto Llywelyn, and with me, as usual, we have Matt Barocco and Steve Carroll. How are you both?
Evening.
I'm good, thanks.
Very good to hear. Everybody's in such a good mood these days. Swans are doing well, and their recent good form continued up in Yorkshire over the weekend with a 3-1 victory away at Rotherham. Steve, start off with you here. The kind of victory in some ways that we've come accustomed to, really. We got ourselves 2 goals ahead, and then, you know, it wasn't always pretty. It wasn't always that convincing, but we got the job done pretty comfortably in the end, would you say?
Yeah, it seems to be what we do, doesn't it? I mean, I was watching the first 20 minutes thinking we haven't really got going here. We haven't done a lot. But that does seem to be a theme for us in quite a few games. So as long as we don't concede, I'm usually quite relaxed because in the end, we quite often seem to create a chance. And more often than not, our percentage of taking chances must be quite high because, you know, we invariably seem to take them, don't they? And quite often they're goals where, you know, they're chances you wouldn't expect us to necessarily take. And that's probably what we saw yesterday, didn't we? I mean, it was a lovely move for that first goal, wasn't it? That was finished with a stunning shot by Conor Hourihane, and then really with the second goal, it didn't really seem like much of a chance. But you know, it's come out to Grimes. I wouldn't have expected him to hit it really, but he has, and what a strike it was. So you know, Rotherham will probably feel like it was a close-ish game where there wasn't much in it. And next thing you know, they're 2-0 down just because obviously we've hit 2 brilliant strikes. So. Yeah, it just seems to be what we do. And then once we go in front, our record is sublime, really. We don't tend to let it slip. So, yeah, that was really how I saw it. We didn't play brilliantly, but it doesn't seem to matter anymore. We seem to find a way. Professional
and efficient were the 2 words that I described the first half at Rotherham on Saturday, Matt. And like Matt said, like Steve said there, sorry. So often this season, we've seen that the Swans basically are, you know, quite evenly matched in the opening stages. But how many times this season have we scored with our first real chance of the game? And that's what happened again, you know, up in Yorkshire. It was just, you know, a very good move. There's no doubt about that. You know, really kick-started by Andre Ayew. Playing it out to Conor Roberts, who's so integral to so many of our attacks. And like Steve said, working it well from there, really. But Rotherham must feel like so many teams this season. They just think, we've done everything right. And then suddenly they find themselves behind and they've got a mountain to climb. And there must be something quite demoralising for the opposition when that happens, especially then when we go and make it 2-0 the way we did on Saturday. And it just... this has crossed my mind. There must be so many teams this season who've come up against the Swans and thought they're nothing special, really. We weren't too far off their level today, but we've just been done by, you know, the more clinical edge. And I guess there's something to be said for that, because when it happens so often, there must be some kind of, you know, there must be something behind it. It's not just pure luck that we keep on taking basically the first chance we get in games.
There is that. I think you're right. And with reference to the first goal, I have to make a point, because I'm quite a vocal, or I have been in the past quite a vocal critic. I'd take it back a phase or so before Ayew got the ball and mention Matt Grimes, who won 2 tackles he probably didn't have any right to win in the centre of the park, to win the ball, to give it Ayew, and to give it to Ayew, and he follows that up with a stunning goal himself. But that for me was possibly the most impressive part, because obviously with the attacking midfield we had, we set up against Rotherham. It was down to him then, not a Corey Smith, not a Jay Fulton. We already know he's put in the most tackles in the division, but he had to be the real dog of midfield as well. He had to be Harry, and he had to be doing all that donkey work, and he did it exemplary. The point you were making about our performance levels and not necessarily playing teams off the park is so valid, but I come to look at it from a different point of view, in that we're doing enough to win games. We had a 2-goal lead. Then we thought, right, okay, we don't really concede, so we were happy just to play that game out. Then Rotherham scored, and we go up the other end and get the third just to kill it. And again, we never really got out to second gear, so we're not really running ourselves into the ground. And I can't remember the last time we did run ourselves into the ground and really, like, you know, grind out a game that we ended up winning. You could look at the likes of Brentford, the game before, a game which we had to grind out to get anything from the game. But in the games we win, we seem to have that element of control, as you say. The professionalism is there, that if there's a threat that we don't get the win, then we just seem to just turn it up a notch. The substitution of Jay Fulton, inspired, freak, coincidence, or whatever, the luck of a manager's decision, whatever. His first touch is a stunning pirouette finish. It just, everything seems to be turning to gold. And of course, when you're 2-0 up, you don't need to bust a lung to keep scoring like Brentford did against Wickham on the weekend. It's all great then, knocking in 7 goals and being a showy kind of, wow, look at them. But it's points on the table that count first and foremost, and we just keep being consistently getting the points, keep winning games, picking up points. If we can't win games, make sure we don't lose them. And as I said a couple of minutes ago, never really having to get out of that second gear, just controlling. The defence is as good as I've seen in my lifetime, and I go back to the Smith bound is probably one of the best defences into that John Hollins era. We've had a few in our time. We've been blessed, but yes. For me personally, this defence is as good as anything I've ever seen. So we can score the goals. Yes, we do have a clinical edge, and Rotherham will feel hard done by. I was actually watching or listening to the Rotherham commentary, and they were saying in the second half they didn't feel too disheartened, because they did praise us and say, look, we are where we are for a reason, and they've come up against a quality outfit, and they've conceded 3 goals of Premier League quality, which I don't think anyone can dispute. But they said that Rotherham, played their part. Again, I don't think many people can dispute that. It's just that we are doing just all we need to do. Because at the end of the day, if we win 1-0 or 7-0, then we just get 3 points. And if we keep doing that, then it's great, because it just means that without overstretching ourselves, the players can stay that just a little bit fresher. And just plough on and keep our best players fit and firing on the pitch.
Yeah, absolutely. And Steve Matt there raised the point. I mean, Rotherham came out in the second half rejuvenated. They made some really progressive substitutions, changed the game. And Freddie Ladapo, who really had a big impact actually when he came on, got the goal. So we saw 2 firsts really. One, well, not first, but abnormalities. Then one of them was Ladapo scored from a header. Only the second time that the Swans have conceded from a header this season, after Tariq Fosu did it for Brentford in the previous match. But secondly, the Swans went on to score 3 goals in a league game for the first time this season. And the fact that the 2 of them were so close together, I mean, goes really to reinforce Matt's point, doesn't it? That we were happy to hold on until we conceded, and then suddenly we said, okay, that's no problem. We'll just go and score another one, and reinstate that 2-goal lead, and we'll be comfortable again.
Yeah, I think you're right, really. I mean, you look at the goal, it wasn't a great goal to concede. I mean, we don't tend to concede too many soft goals, really, but it was one. Obviously, the long throws come in. I think it came off, they come off Bidwell, I think. And then Roberts maybe was slightly sleeping. It's rare for him to get out jumped, but it was a good header. And then you are worrying a bit, to be honest. I thought Rotherham were playing quite well at that stage, and they were the better side. They created a few chances. But again, I mean, we just seem to be the masters of scoring against the run of play. I mean, I look back at the Brentford game, obviously, the other day, they were all over us. And then after they've scored, we've nicked a goal to get in it. The Barnsley game, I would say, the first goal was against the run of play. And then you look at, there's probably been other games as well. QPR, I was thinking of around Boxing Day time. Yeah, our first attack was on the stroke of half time, wasn't it? And we got a goal there, and QPR had numerous chances. So we just seem to be brilliant at it. And it must be so demoralising for the opposition, really, as you say earlier. But I mean, again, it was a lovely goal. Bidwell struck it in, and I didn't think Fulton had that type of flick finish in him, to be honest with you. And when he came on, I was thinking more about him trying to, make sure we can protect the lead, but for him to chip in with a goal is a bonus. And after that, really, I don't think we were in any danger. So, no, for us to get 3 in a game, that is encouraging. I mean, we got 5 in the cup last week, but in the league, we haven't managed to score more than 2. So, yeah, that's nice, and especially considering we didn't create a great deal of chances. But again, we just seem to be clinical, really, don't we? So it is encouraging to think that we don't have to create much, and even if we don't, there's still a fair chance we'll be able to take one of the opportunities at least.
And one of the real, key features of the match was the fact that the Swans, well, first of all 3 goals came from midfield, which is quite a rarity considering, the fact that midfield hasn't really been contributing that much in the way of goals so far this season. Perhaps a sign that things are changing there. Maybe the addition of Conor Hourihane is making us a bit more attack-minded in general in midfield. Matt Grimes certainly on a scoring streak at the moment. But also, there were 3 very good goals, very different goals in certain ways, but all of them, brilliant in their own ways. And we asked you, the listeners, to vote, actually, which was your favourite goal. Not necessarily the best one. Well, it may have been the best in your eyes, may have just been the one you enjoyed most. But we asked you which of the 3 goals was your favourite. In third place, it was reasonably tight. In third place with 27.7% of the vote was the first one for Conor Hourihane, shot from the edge of the area, which perfectly picked out the bottom corner. Second, with 32.2% of the vote, just less than a third, was Jay Fulton's finish at the end of a flowing move. But top, with 40.1%, was Captain Matt Grimes' half volley. Well, we'll start with you, Matt. I'll ask you to which was your personal favourite. Matt, you go first.
Yeah, I'm glad you put it out there. Actually, you suggested that, Paul, because it was quite a nice one to think of. My actual favourite, well, it goes to show, my actual favourite was the one that finished third in the poll, which was the Hourihane effort, because of what we discussed earlier. It was the idea that we fought doggedly to win it back in midfield. Then it was the flow in attacking move. The work by Jamal Lowe on the far post after Roberts did so well to keep it in play and get the cross in, and the idea of Jan Tandra, I've watched it about 20 times back, and he never actually looks directly at Conor Hourihane in that passage of play, but when the ball comes back, he calls for the pass, and as soon as it comes back to him, the layoff is stunning. The technique on the finish is just awesome. I just love the fact that he struck that ball with no backlift at all, and it's arrowed into the corner. And I think what helps my decision is the camera angle, obviously being in the stand on the near side, was perfect to see that ball arrow in. And it may be a little bit biased because I really, really do love the fact that we've got Hourihane on loan for the rest of the season, and fingers crossed, all being well, there may be something in it for the future for us to do something permanently as well. But I just loved everything about that goal. Credit to Matt Grimes. It was a bit more of a outstanding finish as opposed to a great goal, and Jay Fulton was just a superb finish as well. which actually he has done a couple of them previously. He's getting a little bit of form for scoring the spectacular on the rare occasions he does score. But no, for me, for the all-round goal, the build-up, the thought of Danda just to play it in the path, and this stupendous finish, Hourihane got my vote.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned Danda there, because I think a lot of players in his position would have just gone for goal there instead of laying it off. And I thought, that was quite a good decision from his part, and played a big part in the goal. Looked very simple, but just that key decision to lay it off instead of going for the strike made all the difference. Steve, are you in agreement with Matt, or do you have another favourite?
My favourite was the Grimes one, partly because it was so unexpected, but it was such a brilliant strike, really. You can't argue this. It could be the best goal that we've scored this season. It was such a stunning hit. I think he probably couldn't hit it that sweetly again if he tried. But I'd go with the Grimes strike, I think.
I'm going to agree with you, Steve. I'm a sucker for that sweet strike, and hitting it first time on the half volley, curling as well into the bottom corner the way it did. It's a real avid kind of moment. It's primal. It's just that sheer just kick it first time and see where it goes. And it wasn't as intricate. It didn't have probably the finesse of the other goals. But there's just something so beautiful about seeing just somebody stick his laces through that ball and just seeing it fly into the bottom corner. Came out of absolutely nowhere. And I think that just about narrowly shaves it for me ahead of the others. But it's, they were three absolutely fantastic goals, brilliant in their own ways, all of them from midfield. It was probably the most memorable thing from a game, because if I'm being honest, other than the goals, it wasn't really that remarkable a match, which I guess you could say for a lot of Swansea's games this season, but it just kept up the charge at the top of the table. We saw, like you said earlier, Brentford pick up a very emphatic win against Wickham, 7-2. They keep chugging along, but the Swans are still there. A lot of talk has been going on about Brentford's great run. Was 17 matches unbeaten. I think I did the maths the other day. The Swans have only picked up 3 fewer points in that time than Brentford. So as fantastic as Brentford's run is, we're sticking in there. We are just ticking over nicely, and it's not always pretty. It's not always that even enjoyable to watch, if I'm being honest. Sometimes we rely heavily on luck. Sometimes we really have to grind it out. But we just found a way of winning, and so often you see teams go up just simply based on that, just because they found the system that just churns out the wins, and it's effective, and it gets teams up. That mentality at the moment, boys, is quite clear to see. We just feel very, very confident in what we're doing, and very, very comfortable in what we're doing. And I mean, Matt, that makes such a difference, doesn't it? That you have that strong mentality, that you just assume almost that you're at the very least not going to lose when you go up against a team like Rotherham, and chances are that you're going to win.
Yeah, it's so much for me that it almost reminds me of that, Mourinho Chelsea, in that you've got a team there that's built to set up to not concede, to make sure that we, first and foremost, we're going to be very hard to score against. And you also give yourself a bit of license then with your fullbacks to try and create at the other end of the pitch. And that's what we're seeing. You've got some, stunning players in the final third that can change a game on an instant. But the stars of the show for me are always going to be that back 5 or 6, if you include Woodman, that just mean that we don't lose. So it's up to the opposition then, the forward players, to say just grab 1 or grab 2 if you can, because we're not going to concede this end. We're just going to keep it tight and make sure that they don't win any aerial balls, they don't get any knockdowns, anything like that. We're just going to make sure that we keep it tight and we can go the other end and do the business. It is such a good feeling to know. We talked about it in the last couple of podcasts, in that when we take the lead, it does feel like, that might be it. It doesn't. You don't feel very much like the opposition are going to create a great deal, or if they do, that we're going to see it out anyway. There are moments of that can change games, like Mark Gahey's block. I think that was against Brentford the other day, which was just how on earth it didn't end up in the back of the net, I don't know. But it's things like that. You've got players there who will do everything to stop that. It's a pride of it, isn't it? There's the pride of the defence to not concede. And I like that. I like the fact that we feel like as a unit, as a team, because the attackers are involved in our defending as well, that we are so important to make sure we don't concede, and that gives us a platform to win games. And it's nice to see. I mean, the goal against Brentford came from a midfielder. The 3 goals against Rotherham came from midfielders. A few of the goals against Forest in the Cup came from midfielders. So when you consider all things considered, sorry to repeat myself, you got them chipping in. We were talking earlier in the season that someone has to take the burden off Andre Ayew, and then Jamal Lowe started scoring. We're thinking, thank goodness for that. Now Andre Ayew isn't our only source of goals. Now the midfielders have taken the burden off Lowe. It's lovely to see that there's less of a target. I think we saw a few months ago teams doubling up on Andre Ayew because he was our main goal threat. They're trying to suffocate him out of the game, knowing they haven't really got much else going on. If we can keep Andre Ayew quiet, Swansea don't really tick. Then Jamal Lowe started firing. Now we got these goals coming from midfield. Now there's a lot more happening. Now there's a real threat all over the opposition half now, where you can say, and we got long range goals to add to that as well now. So it's exciting. It's good to see, and it does really bode well for the long-term success, or at least the success of this season, because teams that win leagues and get promoted, they tend to be built on strong, resolute defences first and foremost, and that's something we definitely have.
Yep, and Steve, we saw that in the previous game this week against Brentford, where, it was very different to the Rotherham game, I think it's fair to say. A real onslaught from the Bees in an absolute massive game. 21 shots they had, the most that we have faced in a competitive fixture since we lost 3-2 to Man City. Let's go back to that massive game then. How did you rate the Swans' performance then? Because obviously it was important that the Swans got a win at Rotherham after the draw against Brentford. Because more than anything, I think they needed to kind of show that they weren't too downhearted after that. Because I'll be honest, I thought it was a real struggle for us for most of that game.
Yeah, it was a struggle. What I didn't like really was our mentality. I felt that we went into it set up really to make sure that no matter what happened, that we didn't lose. Now, don't get me wrong, a defeat would have been a bad result, and I definitely would have taken a draw before the game. But at the same time, we've only had 2 shots in the 90 minutes. Like, we didn't need to be that cautious. We did just sit quite deep, really, and just wait for Brentford to come on to us. We're above them in the league. I don't think there was a need for us to be that extreme. Now, if we'd had the view of, okay, we won't press the ball so much in the opposition's half, and we will look to play on the break, I could sort of accept that, but it didn't really even feel like we were looking to play on the break. Now, don't get me wrong, I am really pleased that we didn't lose the game, but at the same time, I do think we were quite lucky. The goal had been coming for a long time. Obviously, Norton was quite foolish getting himself sent off for a silly second yellow. And then you could argue with our equaliser that there was a foul on the goalkeeper as well. So I do think we were a little bit lucky. I will take it, don't get me wrong, but I don't want to see us setting up like that again. If we do, then I think we'd be very lucky to get away with it. So, yeah, I'll take the result, but how we got it did leave a few things to be desired.
Matt, what's your take on this? Do we just show Brentford too much respect and set up to defend, or were we kind of forced to do that? Because there's no doubt about it, Brentford were very, very good. They are an excellent team. I think they're probably favourites. Well, they are bookies' favourites to beat us to the second automatic promotion spot. So was it a case of us kind of showing them too much respect, or did they force us to play that way?
I think that there's probably an element of truth in both those statements. I think they were very positive, Brentford, and they did push us and make sure we didn't have any time on the ball. I don't think we did a great deal with it when we got it. I do take that point from Steve. And there was a lot of respect shown from us to them, which was a little bit unexpected, given that we were very much in the position where we could have created that daylight and made sure that their game in hand wouldn't put them above us. But at the same time, it paid off. I know it's bizarre to think that it was a tactic per se, because you go down to 10 men and then you concede 99 times out of 100. That's game over. And as Steve said, the manner in which the equaliser came, I'd be fuming if an opposition player scored against us with footage showing someone challenging the keeper, arms out, and yeah, I thought it was a foul. I'll be honest, I thought it was a foul on the goalkeeper, but the ref didn't, and that's all that matters. But
this is actually the most Swansea City fans I have seen acknowledging that was a foul since it actually happened. I've kept quiet about this because I was like, okay, nobody's talking about it. But
yeah,
I think at first glance I didn't realise it was. Then someone put a photo up the following day of an elbow, and I was like, oh, okay, maybe it is a foul then.
But if you
there
watch
wasn't
it back,
a focus on it at the time, because I think we were just celebrating the fact that we were somehow equal again, and that we were level. But yeah, when you look back at the replay, you can see. I mean, Bidwell jumps, doesn't get the ball, but does get a chunk of David Raya's jaw. I'm not sure if it would have made any kind of difference to the eventual outcome, but that's not really the issue. He did still lead with the arm and caught him.
And I think this is what I was going to jump in on with Steve there, is if you take the still at face value, you have to ask that question, Guto, would it made a difference? As Raya just missed the ball. But if you watch the footage back, and I did watch it back because I do like to feel, particularly with Thomas Frank, that we might have done one over on him. And I do like to feel that way. And if I watch it back, Raya is heading directly for the flight of that ball, and then Bidwell collides with him, and you can see his body pirouette in the air as Bidwell clashes with him. So he's been knocked off course with the ball a couple of yards away from him, flying through the air. So yeah, for me, it absolutely makes a difference in that he's knocked him off his course without connecting with the ball. So I think it does make if Bidwell doesn't clash with the keeper, he makes that punch, and I wouldn't have had any grumbles if it got disallowed. Having said that, it did provide what may well be the photo of the year already. You must have seen this, gents. It looks like a montage, a collage of individual photos put into one photo. The celebration for Hourihane, it's the most ridiculously aesthetically pleasing photo that I've seen in a long, long time. If you haven't seen it, I make no shame in plugging Stuart James, his Twitter feed. He's a fantastic journalist and talks very, very kindly of the Swans as well. So check out his feed. Go back a few days to the Brentford night. He talks about that photo, and he's tagged it on there as well. So fantastic photo. It's just Guto. I'm sure you've seen the photo. Beautiful. It just epitomizes everything we love about this team at the moment: the unity, the belief, and the fact that they just really look like they enjoy each other's company.
It's like a Renaissance painting. It's beautiful. It's just there's so much going on there. It's unbelievable. It's fantastic. And the photographer, I think, is called Kieran McManus. I think he got the credit afterwards. It's perfect. The timing on it, the positioning, everything about it is just stunning. And it's one of those photos that people say, oh, what's your favourite sporting photo? It's one of those that I think a lot of Swansea fans could now turn to and say, do you know what, that's right up there. It's absolutely beautiful. And like you said, it came from, I mean, just the luckiest of goals. Not only the way it was scored and the fact that it was possibly a cross that just happened to go in, the fact that there's what I think is quite a clear foul when you look at the replays, even though it's difficult to spot at the time, possibly, by Bidwell on Raya. And more than anything, Steve, the fact that it came, totally against the run of play. I'll be honest, Norton got sent off, like you said, really stupidly. We expect better from the most experienced player on the pitch, really. 2 really stupid fouls. And his first foul in particular, I think, summed up the mood among too many of the Swansea players on the night. It was nervy. Brentford just booted a long ball upfield and he panicked. And he dragged down Ivan Toney way off the ball, even though Toney was never going to get to that ball. And we saw a lot of these kind of cynical fouls that weren't, they weren't clever, they weren't coy. They often weren't that necessary. They were just born out of panic, really. And I just think there was a nerviness throughout the side that I haven't seen from the Swans again in the other big games that they've played this season. When we played Brentford previously, away at Norwich, Reading, Watford, even, the defensive display against Bournemouth, we were much more composed and had much more of an assurance about us than we did in this game. And I just felt like, on the ball anyway, the occasion may have got to too many of our players against Brentford.
Yeah, I mean, it may have done. Like you say, Norton, he really should have known better, really, shouldn't he? I mean, he's an experienced player. He's played, God knows how many games, a lot of them in the Premier League, and he shouldn't be making decisions like that. I mean, if I'm honest, I was quite surprised that he started and that Bennett was on the bench. That was a decision I couldn't really get my head around, to be honest. I mean, Bennett is a player that, if he's fit, he's in the team as far as I'm concerned, especially for a game as big as this. So that was a bit of a surprising one. I mean, yeah, a lot of our players, I suppose, we do have a lot of youngsters, and yeah, the pressure sometimes maybe it does get to them. I don't know, but we probably didn't play as well as we can. But I do think the mentality was a big thing as well. I didn't like the way that we set up. We did set up in a similar sort of way against Bournemouth, didn't we? And they were a side around us as well. So it does concern me a little bit that if we're going against a side that the manager fears, that this is going to be the way that we're going to go. So it'll be interesting to see what happens on Friday night, because obviously we're playing against a side that's above us, the only team that's above us right now. So are we going to see a similar sort of approach? And again, how are the players going to react to it? As you say, that'll be interesting, I think, given what we saw on Wednesday night.
Yeah, absolutely. And Matt, I mean, final note on this. I mean, we've had a discussion about the way the Swans played with the ball. But defensively, I mean, it was another fantastic performance under real pressure, non-stop, basically, from Brentford. Like I said earlier, 21 shots faced, the most we've faced for nearly 2 years now. But only 1 goal conceded, and so much of that credit has to go to the defence and to Freddie Woodman, because when Brentford did get past our defence, as they did with Josh Da Silva 1-on-1 against Woodman, he stood up strong and made the saves again. And it's that thing that we keep on talking about this season. That defence just gives us a chance of getting points from games, even when we're not at our best.
It does. It is a platform we build from. It is such I said it a few minutes ago, it's such an important element to what we do. And Brentford will come away from that, and fans will come away from that and think, we'd have won that game 9 times out of 10. That's a freak result. That's okay to say in isolation, because the stats suggest that might well be the case. But it's not an anomaly, for us to look like we're getting battered, the opposition are all in our faces, whatever, but we stay strong, we stay resolute. So there's a lot to be said for how we defend as a unit and as a team. It looked like the writing was on the wall after they scored when we already had 10 men, but we did what we had to do. But the defending through the whole game was desperate at times, but it kept the ball out of the net, and it made sure that what is possibly the most dangerous and exciting team to watch attacking wise in the division were kept to 1 goal, which was a header at the end of the day, which is perhaps not what you expected. If you watched the 90 minutes, you'd have expected them to score one of their free flowing attacking moves. But no, we did we did the bit of the dark arts as well. I know you mentioned it a few minutes ago. I don't know whether I was pleasantly surprised or just downright shocked at some of the challenges we were putting in. I'd have called us dirty bastards if we were playing against us, because I was watching some of the challenges that were going in, and players, we were just, like I say, not even Ivan Toney. I feel it was a bit of it was a stupid challenge from Norton, but I think a little bit of Toney chucking himself down there, because he also knows he's never getting to that ball. But if he throws himself to the ground under contact, then he's got a chance of getting Norton into big trouble. So a little bit there. But some of the challenges, I think Fulton jumped in almost knee height on one player, just hurled himself at a player.
I think that was on Ivan Toney again, the second half, and Fulton was extremely lucky not to get a yellow in the first half. So he kind of knew by the second half, do you know what, I'm going to pick up a yellow card.
Get a yellow card.
I might as well make it worth my while. And I've said before, like, if I had my way with the rules, that would be a red card for me, because I don't understand. Football's a strange game. You can get a red card for basically just touching somebody's face, but you full-blown kick somebody off the ball with no attempt to win the ball, and that's only a yellow. It just does not make sense. Like, that for me is violent conduct, because you're not trying to win the ball, you're just trying to kick the player, and that's what Fulton did. But, you know, it was that kind of game, and like you said, I thought we were dirty as hell against Brentford.
Yeah, it was just one of those things where I was watching it going. I think I messaged my dad during the game and said, I think we may have earned a couple of these yellow cards tonight. So often when you watch the Swans over the last 10, 15 years, you've seen the opposition foul and foul and foul again, and then the first time a Swans player puts a boot in, yellow card, and you're thinking, for fuck's sake, how is it every time we put a foul in, we getting booked, and the opposition can kick and kick and kick, and the ref's giving a talking to? But no, I have no complaints about any of the decisions, really, against Brentford. I thought every yellow card was fully deserved, and goes back to something I've believed for a long time. If you're going to get booked, at least make sure you deserve it, because some of the times players hurl themselves to the ground, and you pick up a booking, and you think, oh, you've put me on a difficult position here now without actually warranting it. But no, absolutely warranted every one of those for me. I thought it was a new way of playing, perhaps a very interesting approach, but we certainly weren't going to let Brentford have an easy ride.
Interesting is a very polite way of putting it. If I was a neutral or an opposition fan, I would hate the Swans right now. You know, obviously, it's great when it's your team doing it, but if I was a neutral now, just watching the Swans from the outside, I think, man, they're a horrible team. They are absolutely horrible. But you always have these kind of teams every single year, and we are that team this year. Steve, final word. I thought Mark Gahey was absolutely fantastic again. Cabango was brilliant too, both them defensively excellent. But Gahey just on the ball is fantastic. On a night when everybody else seemed to be losing their heads and making poor decisions, looked to be losing their, just doing the wrong thing all the time, he was the one that looked composed, very rarely made a mistake, was trying to move the team forward. And every time I see him, I just think, one, we're extremely lucky to have him, but two, that there's no debate. He is the best centre-back in this division, isn't he?
Oh, he is unbelievable. I mean, you wouldn't believe that we'd be saying this a year ago, would you, when he first came in? But he's just stepped up so much. I mean, the timing of his challenges, for example, and decision-making in terms of when to make a challenge, he's just superb. He very rarely seems to make a mistake. He seems to smell the danger. He always puts him, like I said, that block that he had against Brentford. Like I say, on the ball, he's barely got a weakness, has he? He really is just fantastic. I think long term he could honestly play for Chelsea, like in the first team, like as a regular. That wouldn't surprise me. But if we go up, I am hoping they might say, "Oh yeah, you can have another year," because I do think that another year playing regularly for somebody in the Premier League next season would be brilliant for him. And if it was with us, obviously that would be fantastic. So yeah, I'm full of praise for him. He's fantastic, isn't he?
He is absolutely incredible. I'm in agreement with you. I know Frank Lampard has gone from Chelsea now, and he was really pushing to bring through youth players. We'll have to see what Thomas Tuchel has to say about it. But when you look at what Gay does week in, week out, you're thinking this boy's destined for greatness. We'll move on now from the matches that we've played against Brentford and Rotherham. 4 points from those two games. I think we would have all taken that result if offered it beforehand. We are in the final stages of the January transfer window. Steve, it's a window in which, from my point of view, we've been more active than I expected us to, but we may not be done yet. Two names that, at the time of recording, are possibly in the pipeline for moves. One of them looking more likely than the other, we're thinking. The one looking most likely is Morgan Whittaker from Derby, a player who I believe Steve Cooper has worked with in the past. And when we do get players who he's worked with in the past, they tend to work out well for us, don't they?
Yeah, they do. His goal scoring record doesn't look brilliant. I think it's 1 goal in 25 games. I did read a few threads on Twitter, and they weren't very encouraging about him. But everybody deserves a chance, don't they? He's only a young player. I don't think he'd be coming here and playing regularly to start with, at least. But like I said, Cooper's transfer record has been very, very good so far. There's not been many misses. So if it's a player that he wants, as far as I'm concerned, as long as the finances are reasonable, then we go with it, because he's earned that trust. So that's really where we have to look at it. I don't think we are desperate for a striker at this stage, but I suppose we have now picked up a couple of injuries, and we with Liam Cullen and Wayne Routledge, so I can understand why we might want to go down this route. So yeah, I think we have to back the manager if that's what he wants.
Matt, £700,000, I think, is the reported fee. I believe it's reported that Derby are going to accept our bid. I mean, not many clubs in the Championship are spending £700,000 these days. But are you surprised that we're spending money in this window? We've already brought in the likes of Hourihane, Ben Hayman, and Jordan Morris. Okay, we didn't pay any fees for any of those, but they add to the wage bill, and now we're willing to spend £700,000 on a very young striker. Did you expect this before the window started?
It's not something I expected, but it is something that I think we've discussed previously. When we got relegated, really was a case of, if we're in a position in January to get promotion, let's back the manager, because $500,000 and $1 million there could make the difference and could see you over the line. So it's one of those ones where you think, look, you don't know how much game time he's realistically going to get. He's a young striker, but we've got plenty of young players in the team. Looks like he may be providing a backup for like as Steve said, like so Cullen and Routledge, which just picked up injuries, and those players, if he's replacing them, then they were very much squad players at the time of the injuries anyway. So if he's filling that void, then we got something to see. It seems a lot of money for us to spend at the moment, but I've heard mixed reports. There's people, fans of Derby, that have said, this is the worst player I've ever seen. He doesn't look like he stands any chance of being a footballer long term, because he doesn't know his way around a football pitch. And I've got others that have said 700 grand seems very, very cheap for a under 20 international who they think has lots of potential, needs a bit more game time, and was he 20 years old? He's got a lot of potential to go on and make something of himself. And as someone touted the figure, they'd have rather them held on for something like 2 million, because they valued him at that. But it's varied opinions. I think a lot of them were basing him on what they'd seen for Derby, and others were looking at it and say, well, no, this is a product of potential here, and we're buying him for our registration for the future. So potentially there we've got ourselves a bargain. Now I hope it turns out that way. But I don't expect him to come in and take the starting spot or anything like that. I expect he will be filling a gap left by Cullen and Routledge. And what we didn't mention, of course, when we were talking about the Rotherham game, is we saw 8-9 minutes of Jordan Morris as well, who put himself about nicely. So he's another option we've got up top. hope he gets more minutes, as we discussed in last week's pod, and gets a bit of a chance to really stretch his legs and show us what he's about. So there's a pecking order, and I think that it's important that we understand that it's clear that Ayo and Lowe, it's their position to lose, and correctly so. We have players waiting in the wings if there is need for injuries, suspensions, or just tired legs. That we want to freshen things up. Jordan Morris would be the next in line there at the moment, and then this youngster from Derby. So I think it's one with the eye to the future, isn't it? But it's another one, off the production line of Steve Cooper's under-20 squad. I think we're just about there now. All we need to do is sign Phil Foden and Jadon Sancho, and we've completed the set.
Well, I'm sure they'll be interested in the move. We've still got a bit of time left in the transfer window. Steve, the only other name that we seem to be getting seriously linked with at the moment is a player called Paul Arriola. We're clearly looking to the MLS for options at the moment. American international, plays for DC United as a right back. This one seems a little bit further off than the Whittaker one. Not sure if this one's going to come off or not, but I mean, regardless of whether it does come off or not, we seem to be, we're quite clearly interested and have been discussing it. I wouldn't have personally said that a right back was a priority for the Swans. Would you have thought that too?
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, we've got Colin Roberts, who's in the form of his life. He doesn't even seem to need a rest. He just keeps going, doesn't he? So, if he's fit, he's going to play. And then we've got Kyle Norton as the backup, haven't we? So, yeah, from my point of view, I don't think we need a right back at all. I think as long as everything goes to plan, we're pretty solid in that position. So I am quite surprised to see us linked with one. I mean, time will tell whether the deal gets done or not. But yeah, I don't think it's a priority from our point of view. I think we're in a good position in that area.
Yeah, that's how I see it. Joe Latibodiere apparently can play as a right back too. So I'd say we're pretty well covered in that department, really. But there we go. We'll wait and see what happens in the final 24 hours of the window. Let's now talk about possibly one of Swansea's greatest ever signings, who has retired this week. The word legend gets thrown about a lot, but for me, this man is one of the absolute great legends of this football club. A man who joined us in League One, led us to, had enjoyed 2 promotions with the Swans, captained us in the Premier League, barely ever missed a match, an absolute man mountain and an incredible leader at the back. Ashley Williams has hung up his boots. Wasn't a major surprise, Matt. I mean, he's been without the club this season. So I guess it was to be expected that he would announce this at some point, but still, we've seen Swansea fans and Wales fans over the last week or so pay their tributes to one of our greatest ever captains, undoubtedly. I mean, how do you think he's going to be remembered? He
goes down as a legend, doesn't he? No doubt about it. I think, as you say, it gets thrown about quite easily these days. But this is a man who epitomised our greatest era in my lifetime. He was an absolute rock. We're talking about this defence and how strong it is and how resolute it is. Well, this was a leader from the back. This was a man who just never knew when to quit. One moment which I think epitomised him, I think we were playing Man United at home at the Liberty, and Wayne Rooney, of all people, was running through on goal, and he was clear of Ashley Williams, but he never got the shot away. Ashley Williams got there and tackled him before he got the shot away, and I think that's what reminds me of Ashley Williams the most, is that this is a man who fought for everything, and he never thought that the opportunity had gone for him to do something. If there was a chance for him to make amends or to do the unthinkable, he would do everything he could to do it. He was the perfect. You were going to build a centre half. You'd build an Ashley Williams anyway. He wasn't sluggish. He was strong as an ox. He was good in the air. He was he wasn't blessed with goal scoring ability. I think he won't mind us saying that. He did get a few for us, but certainly wasn't prolific. But no, he was everything, wasn't he? You could just start with, right, what's the team going to be today? Well, of course, it's Ashley Williams, and then let's pick another 10. And I think that epitomised everything that was great about him, was that he was undroppable. It was no thought that Ashley Williams... Guto, you'll know the stats. He had some fantastic, incredible run of games. I don't think he missed one in years for us. But I don't want to put you on the spot with the actual figure because I haven't prepped you for this at all. But there's certainly some incredible run of form.
Yeah, I think he basically missed 9 Premier League games in all the years that he was playing for the Swans. And I think most of those were just down to him being rested ahead of key games, either for club or country. But his fitness record while with the Swans was out of this world. I mean, he'd go down and you think, oh my gosh, this looks like a really nasty one. He could be out here, and then suddenly you get up and just play on as if nothing had happened. I mean, the guy must have lived on painkillers. He was just invincible. He was a tank.
At that moment, there were 3 or 4 of the big hitters in the Premier League that really should have thrown a lot of money, because he would have done a job for me in the top 4. In his pomp, when we were at our pomp, he was one of the defenders of the Premier League. He was a leader. He got us some massive results through his never say die attitude. So yeah, I think he was very unlucky not to get his huge move. But I think was it the Northern Ireland game in the Euros where he'd hurt his arm and he refused to come off, and he saw at the last few minutes of the game looking like he couldn't move about. Moments like that, would not know when to quit, would not know when to say, I'm done, I need a break. Like you say, in phenomenal run of games played for us. Another moment, his goal against Belgium, the look on his face was he's run away to celebrate that. It's just undiluted joy. Absolutely everything about it. He obviously didn't know what to do. He didn't score enough goals to know what to do. He just started running and made a beeline for the bench then. And we talked about the photo of the Hourihane goal against Brentford as being a special moment to remember. Another special moment was no one who is a Wales fan will forget the run and celebration for his equaliser against Belgium, because I can vision it frame by frame in my head as because it's just something you've seen over and over again, and it just brings you memories of that joy that the whole country felt. But he was a leader for club and country, and I think it's a testament to the man that there was plenty of Cardiff fans as well lining up to say, you're a Jack and everything that comes with that. But thank you for everything you did for Wales, because you brought me some of the greatest moments I've had following my country. And that's a testament to the man and the player, because he was a rock for us and for Wales.
Well said. Steve, I mean, you were out in Lille, as was I, when he had probably the greatest moment of his career, scoring in that match, a massive goal to help turn the tide in that quarter-final against Belgium. But I mean, his leadership throughout that run, not just during the Euros, but leading up to the Euros. I mean, he took over from Aaron Ramsey, who had quite clearly been out of his depth as captain, but he took over the captaincy for Wales at a time when Welsh football really had to question which direction we were going in. It just did not look like things were ever going to work out. We looked a bit lost as a footballing nation, really, and it wasn't good. And he had to kind of take us through some tough times, some really, really tough times before, eventually leading us on that incredible journey to the semi-finals in the Euros. He was there every step of the way, every single match, and he was as much a leader for Wales as he was for the Swans. And the fact that kind of got his first cap when he was 24 and retires as one of Wales's most capped players, I mean, just adds to this mystique around him, doesn't it? His personal story, the way he came into professional football late and rose through the ranks, found, as many English-born footballers do, found this link to Wales, which enabled him to play international football. But few of those players embrace it the way Ashley Williams did. And in the past, I think a lot of those players in Ashley Williams' situation have been accused by Wales fans of not really giving enough, of not feeling it enough. You could never, ever accuse Ashley Williams of not feeling it enough, whether he was playing for club or for country, could you?
No, you couldn't. I mean, I think Ashley Williams initially did end up playing for us because he sort of realised that he could nick a cap. I think that's the famous saying, really. I think it was down to Brian Flynn, if I remember rightly. I think Wayne Hennessy was on loan at Stockport and he was the under-21 manager, so I think he went to have a look at him. And I think Flynn used to look at anyone who sort of had like a Welsh-sounding surname, and obviously that's what Williams is. So he sort of he tried to find out then about it, and I think it was a coincidence, his surname, because I think it actually comes from his mother's side of the family, the Welsh link. So
really,
yeah. So it's a funny one, really. I mean, Brian Flynn has got endless stories. I'm not sure if you've ever heard the story about how Carnu ended up playing for Wales. It's probably brilliant for a separate podcast issue, but that's how it ended up happening, really. But I mean, Williams he did lead Wales through some tough times, as you say. I mean, when he got the captaincy, we'd lost Gary Speed. We'd lost 6-1 in Serbia. We were at a low ebb. The manager's job was on the line, and he really did play a big part for Wales. I mean, you look at the qualifying campaign. I think there were 6 clean sheets out of 10. I mean, that's unheard of for a Welsh team, really. Obviously, 2 shutouts against Belgium, which was superb, really, when you think about it, with the quality of players that they had. And then, like I say, he was huge just in the tournament. That goal against Belgium remains one of my greatest moments, I think, in football. They're certainly in there. And that summer is one we'll never forget. I mean, in terms of the Swans, like I say, his record of missing hardly any games is pretty staggering. I think it was 166 league games in a row he played as well. I think he had some sort of bug, so he missed a game at Fulham in the first year in the Prem. I remember he had a knock in the year of the Europa League around the time of the Valencia game, because I remember he didn't play in Valencia, and a few of the games around there he didn't play. But other than that, as you say, there were not many games he missed, and I think he actually missed the last 2 games of his final season year because he was given a break before the Euros. So, when you look at it, £400,000 that we spent on him, it could be the greatest deal that we've ever done, apart from signing maybe Leon on a free transfer. Pretty staggering, 350 odd games. He was just so consistent, wasn't he? There weren't many mistakes. I don't think there was a red card, which is quite remarkable in 8 seasons for a centre half, because you're always likely to pick one up with possibly being the last man or anything like that. But that didn't happen. So yeah, the phrase legend, it does annoy me, the amount that it gets thrown about. I think we should probably do a podcast maybe in the summer. We should discuss who is a legend and who isn't at this club. But surely no one can disagree that Ashley Williams is one. Like, from my point of view, obviously we've not watched the entire history of the Swans, but it'd be very difficult to argue that Ashley Williams should not be in the greatest ever Swansea City 11, given that he played for us for 8 years during our most successful era, was the captain, and really was tremendous for us. So I think that's how he deserves to be remembered.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, one of the most natural leaders I have seen in football in my lifetime, if I'm being honest. I mean, sometimes people question, the value of the captaincy, etc. Does it really make a difference who's wearing the armband? I think it's fair to say that with Ashley Williams, that armband on his bicep made a huge difference. He really did take on that responsibility like no one else I've ever seen do it, both for Wales and Swansea. As far as I'm concerned, Wales' greatest captain ever, Swansea's greatest captain ever. An absolutely incredible human being. And I mean, looking ahead to the future, I've heard talk that he may be interested in going into coaching and management. on the face of it, he would be a brilliant. He has the potential to be a brilliant coach and manager, because not only was he a superb defender, he was a very able footballer and an absolutely incredible leader of men. So I think, that there is a definite future for him in coaching if he wants it. Right, let's move on. We've had one big game against a promotion candidate already this week. We're now going to look ahead to the next one. Matt, Norwich, the only team above us in the table as we record this, they come down to the Liberty on Friday night. How big a match is this?
It's the next biggest match of the season, isn't it? I mean, we talked last week about Brentford being the biggest match of the season, and you're right. We went into that and we thought it could be an absolute barnstormer of a game. Didn't turn out that way from us, but we finished the week with 4 points from 6, and I don't dare say that any of us would have turned that down in last week's pod had we decided what we'd have accepted from the week. But, we've basically done everything that we can to put ourselves into a position here to make Norwich catchable. They are still favourites to go up, and rightly so. But they're in a position now where a win for us against them, brings them right back into the chase, and is catchable for 3 or 4 teams. Then adds to the pressure. With Brentford, we were the team ahead, and perhaps maybe the pressure was on us to keep that lead. Maybe the situation's reversed here now. Norwich know that they can't afford to lose to us if they want to keep their cushy little number at the top. So I'm hoping that it doesn't play out like Brentford. I'm hoping that we take the game to them as opposed to playing such a cautious game. And I dare say Norwich are obviously a more complete unit because of, the table doesn't lie at the end of the day. But I would say Brentford are a bigger threat attacking-wise. And that may seem like a big statement to make. But I feel statement. Yeah, I like Norwich, and I think they are they're primed back to go straight back to the Premier League, and rightly so. But I look at the way sometimes I see Norwich a little bit wasteful, and I see perhaps it's not with Brentford. They almost play like all out attack. You see them run forward, they pour forward with numbers, and they look like any one of 4 or 5 players could score in any attack. And I think for them that's a threat that really does strike fear into a lot of teams, and rightly so. I mean, they just notched up 7 against Wickham, as we discussed earlier on. Not to say that it's not impossible to do against the team right down at the bottom in this league, and a few of those goals came late on, but they've got such a variety of options and attacking wealth, and I feel like Norwich, they have more focused threats. What a massive loss Buendia is going to be for them, by the way, who we talk about Ayew being the standout player in this division. If there's one player who would rival that, it's him. He's been touted with big moves this window, none of which have come to fruition. However, he's suspended now for the game, and it leaves us in a great position because he is their best player for me, and he is obviously he's been their star man this season. He's made them tick. So yeah, I do feel like it's an opportunity for us rather than a potential horrible situation for us where we can actually look to bring them into it. Norwich are a fantastic team, but we can play against them, and hopefully I hope that we play against them and show that we've got threats ourselves, because we've started seeing goals come from midfield. We've obviously got the 2 men up front. We've got a strong bench now as well. Who knows? We may even add to that tomorrow, as we've already discussed. So it's a massive game. There's no getting away from it. It's fair to say that short of playoffs now, this is the biggest game between now and the end of the season, because it could mean that we get sucked into a race for the playoffs, or put us in a position where we are very much in the automatics hunt going into the last furlongs of the season. So it's big game after big game at the moment, but I am nervous, excited. Let's hope that we can perform.
Well, that's been bigged up quite significantly. Steve, how highly do you rate Norwich? I mean, they were one of the favourites to go back before the season started. They are clear at the top of the league now. They've kept most of the teams that got relegated from the Premier League. Do you think this is a better Norwich team than the one which won the league 2 years ago?
I think it's tough to say if it's a better one, really, because it's more or less the same one. So it's probably at a similar level. I mean, I'm not surprised in the slightest that they are up there. I mean, they did pretty much no business last season, so I think it was quite likely they were going to come down. But by the same token, then they were not going to be under pressure to sell people. So that made me think that they'd have a very good chance of going back up. Plus the fact that a lot of other clubs were going to be struggling financially. So it's probably a similar level. I do think it's going to be tough for two teams to catch them and stop them going up automatically. If I'm honest, I think they are a good side, and this is going to be a very difficult game for us. It does leave me concerned, if I'm honest, because I do have a fear that we might set up in the same way as we did against Brentford, and if we do, then I think we're asking for trouble, to be honest with you. So yeah, it's a big game. Let's see what Friday brings, I suppose.
And Matt's raised it already, but Emi Buendia is going to be suspended. Picked up his second red card of the season against Middlesbrough over the weekend. I mean, most neutrals across this league, I think, would name him the player of the season if the award was given out today. He is a very talented midfielder, a real creator and a goal threat. He was impressive in the reverse fixture earlier on the season at Carrow Road. I mean, how much does this change things for you, Steve?
I think it's definitely a help. I think Norwich, obviously, I don't think they're over-reliant on one player, but obviously he's a player that if he's available, he'd be in the team without a doubt because he is a quality player and he has done a lot of damage against opposition sides for them this season. So it's definitely a blow for them. It's good news for us, but we need to take advantage of it, obviously. I mean, hopefully they won't create as much with him not in the side, but I mean, they've got a lot of other good players, haven't they? So, whilst it's good news, I'm not going to get carried away, I don't think.
I think I'm getting a bit more excited by that than you are. I see that as quite a big absence for them. I think he's just that player who has that X factor. You look at their team; they've got tons of attacking threat. Pukki up front, Vrancic, Cantwell, Paqueta, the Polish youngster. And in fairness, they got players to come in for Buendia as well. I mean, Onel Hernandez is back from injury. He's an option for them. But I just think Buendia is the best player in this division, in my opinion. He is just one of these players that you love to watch. He is so creative. He is so good at creating chances. Any team in this division would surely miss that kind of player. I mean, I can't see them being as much of a threat without him in the side. And they're so used to having him in the side. He's only missed 4 games this season, 3 of them right at the start of the season. So, after those first 3 games, he's only missed 1 due to suspension. But the stats suggest that they are, much better off with him in the team. Where their points per game, with Buendia on the side this season is 2.22 points per game. Without him, it's 1.25, so nearly half of that. I just think even though they've got plenty of options to come in instead of him, he's one of those players that is just something special. And I don't know if it's wishful thinking, but I'd love to think that would swing things a little bit further in our favour. Matt,
with his, sorry to jump in there, with his he's the greatest contributor to their goals assists, Guto, as well as you well know, with 13. Pukki has got 12, but 11 of those are goals. So, I mean, you're looking at the players, which rightly are, fantastic players and great threats. But looking at the top scorers list here now, Pukki obviously out in front with 11. Buendia is going to be missing. He's got 7. Then you're looking at Hugel, Vrancic, Cantwell, 4, 3, 2. So
Hugel's injured as well, so he's not going to be playing either.
yeah, so there we are. You're looking at Vrancic with 3 goals and 3 assists, Cantwell with 2 goals and 3 assists. Then you're looking at Kenny McLean. These are all players that, apart from Cantwell, who's played 16, they've all played over 20 games this season. So even if you take Brentford's 7-2 win out of the picture, they'd already scored, quick maths, 5 goals more than us, played a game less. Norwich have only scored 2 goals more than us, but have conceded 6 more. So I think there's a little bit more of a reliance on a specific player for them than maybe Brentford have. And I look at that. I know, obviously, Brentford have got even Tony up front, who's just been banging them in, but they have that all-round threat. Whereas the stats at least suggest for Norwich that they are a little bit more reliant on the final ball being given to Pukki to stick in the back of the net, usually by Buendia as well. So him missing, hopefully we'll just be able to stick Mark Gehi on Timo Pukki and do a job on him for 90 minutes. And looking around then, there's not many more goals in their midfield than in ours, and we've been talking about our midfield being very dry for a long time. So hopefully we can give them a good game.
You said that just put Gehi on Pukki to keep him quiet. I mean, we've talked up Gehi in this episode, but that's going to be one of his biggest tests this season. Pukki is just one of these natural strikers. His runner, he times his runs to perfection. He's a finisher. He is their danger man, especially now with Buendia off the scene as well.
I've got a question actually, which I'll save the answer to, or save the conversation for another podcast anyway. But it was more Mark. We talked to Mark Gehi a little bit earlier on, and how instrumental he is, and how he probably is destined for the top few of the Premier League, maybe with Chelsea. And I was looking at it thinking, I can't remember the last time we're blessed with players, and it's a conversation on the podcast. Who is your favourite Swans player at the moment? Because you could look at it and there'll be people who will say Andre, Jamal Lowe, Matt Grimes will get a shout. Hourihane's just come in and instantly won over the fans. Freddie Woodman, Mark Gehi, Ryan Bennett I got a lot of time for. Connor Roberts. So we're blessed at the moment. We've got 6 or 7 players in the starting lineup, which I think people will have different favourites as well. I think, like your question of what was your favourite goal on the weekend, I think who is your favourite Swans player and why is certainly a conversation we should have on a quiet week on this pod, because I feel like if we put that out to the Twitter following, that we'd have quite a few responses. It's we're blessed with a lot of likeable, very, very talented players at the moment.
That discussion would take a long time. It really would, because like you said, we've got a really likeable squad now. They're the kind of players that you want, that they've got the attitude that you want when you're playing for the Swans, as far as I'm concerned, which is just great to see. I mean, Steve, one key difference between the Swans and Norwich this week is that we don't have any games before that Friday night clash. Norwich do. They are away to Millwall on Tuesday night. Do you think that could potentially have some kind of impact on them, the fact that they are going to be playing just 3 nights before they have this big top of the table clash against us?
It won't do us any harm, will it? Put it that way. I mean, it's tough to say 100% for sure, but I do think for us it is convenient that we don't have a game this week, because we have got a challenger one. The last thing we'd want is a grueling midweek game, and then everyone's tired, a couple of players pick up a knock or anything like that. So I do think from that point of view, it has worked out quite well. We can't complain on that front.
No, absolutely not. I think the time has come to move on to predictions. This is the usual time where we put our necks on the line and usually get it wrong. So, I mean, it's a massive game at the top end of the table. Norwich is currently 4 points ahead of the Swans. That could, of course, be extended if they go to Millwall and pick up something. How fantastic would it be, by the way, if Millwall were to take points off Norwich in the run up to that game? That would really set it up, put the pressure on the Canaries, and In fairness, Millwall have taken points off every single one of the top 6, apart from the Swans, so far this season. And they've only lost 3 games at home all season, which, when you consider their league position, I think they're level on points with Cardiff. So they're having a pretty torrid year on the whole. Their home foot, they're still quite difficult to beat at home, and they're capable of taking points off the top 6. So I was going to ask you there for a prediction of Millwall against Norwich, but I'll skip that one and go straight ahead to Friday night's match. Matt, you go first. Can the Swans get what would be an absolutely massive win?
Yeah, we can. I think that question is answered with a yes. Will we is all dependent on our approach. I think we need to play. We do need to give Norwich respect and not think that it's going to be easy because Buendia is not there, because that's certainly not going to be the case. But also recognise the opportunity that Buendia is not there, because it would be a lot tougher for us if he was. And so I think there's a massive opportunity for us to go and make a real statement, and they'll reflect on the Brentford performance. Look, whatever Steve Cooper says in the press about how we played and etc. and how we kept Brentford quiet, and he'll have had his own opinions behind closed doors, and we won't hear them, and rightly so. So as long as he accepts behind closed doors that perhaps it played out a little bit too negatively against Brentford, and he addresses that, well, he's got a quick turnaround to do so. I would hate to be in Norwich's position if it was no bigger game on a Friday. If we were playing, if they were playing Millwall on the Tuesday and a Bristol City on the Friday, it would be annoying for them. But to have what looks like one of the games of the season followed up so shortly after another game is a massive kicker for them. So I think missing a player, playing a game 72 hours before, there are signs there that we could do it. So I'm going to remain optimistic. I'm going to say that we're going to, and neither of you are going to go with this because I think you're a little bit more cautious than I, but I'm going to say that we'll go win 1-0.
1-0, says Matt. Steve?
I'm going to put my tin hat on. I think Norwich are going to beat us 1-0.
Ooh.
I fear a cautious display from us, and I think we will pay the price.
I'm hoping, I don't know if this is head or heart, I'm hoping we'll see a similar display to the one that we saw at Carrow Road earlier on in the season, which was one of the best performances we've put in this season, but we didn't get the deserved result. I'm hoping that's what we'll do. And if we play like that against them, I think you're both right. I think that's the way to go against Norwich, because they are a brilliant side. I love watching Norwich play. They are deservedly top of the league. I think they're fantastic. They carry plenty of threat. They're going to be such a tough opposition, but they only play one way. They will always go, attacking. They'll always try and play football, but they will leave the odd gap at the back. You will get 1 or 2 chances, as we saw away at Carrow Road. They've only kept 2 clean sheets in their 14 games away from home in all competitions this season. So they do tend to concede. And like I think Matt said earlier, they do have a tendency as well to waste a lot of chances. They're not like us in the sense that we only need, we take our chances and score we win games with very few clear-cut chances. They will waste a lot of chances as well as score them, because they're that prolific at creating chances. I think if our defence plays the way it always does, and we can just find that 1 or 2 chances, I think there's a chance here to win it. And I want to see us go and attack it, because we are playing catch up with Norwich. They're 4 points ahead of us as things stand. Very likely that they will extend that at least by 1 point, probably 3 beforehand. We're playing catch up here. A draw in the contest of our relationship with Norwich probably isn't enough from this game. If we really want to close down close that gap, Norwich don't drop enough points really for us to just play for a draw at least. I think we have to try at least to go for the win. So I'd like to see that attitude. And if we do play with that attitude, I think we've got a chance. So I'm going to be optimistic and say that with Emi Buendia off the radar, with Norwich playing shortly beforehand, I'm going to go for a 2-1 win for the Swans. That may be heart overruling head, but I think there are a few things in our favour here, and if we can do that, I mean, that would be massive, because Brentford are pretty relentless at the moment. We're having to win every single game just to keep them at the same points gap, really. It would be good if we could bring Norwich back into that battle for the top two, because as things stand, they look to be running away with it. They need to start losing points a bit more regularly for us to catch up with them. I mean, whatever happens, it's an absolutely massive game, and yeah, it's one which we hope the Swans can get at least a draw out of. Who knows, maybe even a win. Well, we'll be recording another podcast after that match, which will be going out before the big FA Cup clash against Manchester City. Looking ahead to that, can the Swans get revenge for what happened 2 years ago in the FA Cup quarter-final? And we'll also, of course, be analysing that massive match against Norwich. Hopefully 3 points for the Swans. We'll just have to wait and see. Until then, thank you very much for joining us. Goodbye.